Welcome to the next episode of DTLA, a podcast about the past, present, and future of downtown Los Angeles. I'm Danielle Wolf, and I'm here with my co-host, Elwa Gerard. How are you?
Oh, hello, Danielle. I'm very good. I'm so happy to join the podcast again. I think we're going to start by just a little update of what happened for us this week, and we're going to introduce a guest that you introduce with us. And also present the future activities, the things that are going to happen in downtown.
So we'll introduce our guest in more detail in a bit, but if you saw the title of the episode, we'll have his name in the title. His name is Scott Moe, and so he's here with us in studio.
Hey, everyone.
Hey, that's Scott. And we're gonna have a really interesting discussion about him and his downtown story. First, though, we're going to talk about what happened this week in downtown and what we did. What did you do downtown this week?
This week was very DTLA focused for some reason. So I have been asked by a company to start doing tour to help people to visit downtown. So I was in a little training to learn how to give a little tour to tourists, or to French tourists, because they speak French better than English. And so I will guide them from the Little Pueblo to, Broadway and Historic Core and the different things. So I'm learning on how to do that. I need to read a little bit the history, but I know that not very well.
So is it like a walking tour?
Yes, walking tour.
You're not like little segues kind of around downtown, or
we should do that. Yes.
Yeah, or little scooters.
Well, we will talk about that also. Yeah, no, it's just like a regular French tourist who are looking for history, because usually French tourists or European tourists, when they come to LA, they are more interested in the history of LA, so they usually end up in downtown to look at the history of downtown.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yes.
But as a downtown resident, you can also point out some of the great places to eat and hang out and go out. I'm sure they would like, the insider tips about the best places to see live jazz or whatever they're looking for. Yeah.
The idea is to share also, stories of gangsters downtown and things that are a little bit more exciting, where there is some, but I'm in the danger. And then I also, before you speak, I have a little interesting thing about downtown is that I was in a convention about my field in virtual reality and augmented reality, and I followed a conference about a team from USC who is working in recreating the Chinatown as it was before under the Union Station. Okay, so where you can use augmented reality with your phone, but probably in the future with your glasses, and go to Union Station. And instead of seeing Union Station, Union Station has been built on the old Chinatown, and is to have a new memory and of how it was. And I think it's a very exciting project that I would love to follow up on that and see how we could help also on that.
Yeah, well, we should do a whole episode about the former Chinatown and the building of Union Station and that part of the history.
Exactly.
Get an expert on to talk about it. So.
Yes, I think it would be very exciting. So that's my little week. Yes. Yeah.
I did a couple things. I went to a comedy night at the Athletic Club, which was a lot of fun. They've been doing a few of those over the past few months, and so this was their latest edition, and they had a really good turnout. And it was a great night. And then I went to the Historic Core Farmers Market this morning, actually, to get some produce and kind of check it out. And we did something together this week too.
Yes, we did a little trivia.
So if you listen to our mini episode that we posted over the weekend, we went to a downtown LA trivia night that was hosted by the Historic Core Business Improvement District. And how did we do?
We did quite well. So it was at course. I don't know if you listened to this little mini episode.
I have not heard the mini episode yet. That's just.
What are you talking?
I brought yesterday. I was recording. I listened to all the other episodes, and I was like, get that one.
Well, then spoilers. I got second place. You tied for third.
Great.
Yeah, they made us do it individually instead of as a team. I think we could have really
Yes.
kicked some butt as a team.
We
But
would have been first. So yeah.
yeah.
I mean, so what were the questions? We're like,
Well, we're gonna give you some of them later. That's the exciting part. We're gonna test your knowledge and see how it stacks up against our knowledge. So, but yeah, we'll get there. But and Scott, what did you do this week? Tell us about your week.
all right. So this week I didn't have quite as a focus on downtown this week. I have two different jobs that I do. One is at USC. So I was working at USC. I was actually working from home in my condo here in downtown. And then I also do part-time work as an EMT. So I was actually working in kind of the east part of LA, a lot of kind of downtown area. And I was doing that, let's see, Tuesday, Wednesday, and yesterday. So yesterday was a 24-hour shift. That's one of the kind of things. But I did get to go and have lunch over at the Grand Central Market on Friday. I went over to Ramen Hood. Have you ever been there? It's a it's a vegan ramen place, which is really, really great. And so love that place. Got to have lunch over there.
Sorry for our huge international audience. What is ENT?
Oh, an ENT. Oh, yeah. I am an emergency medical technician. So my job is basically driving an ambulance. And so this is something that's not really my career. It's something that I try to do is a little bit of a community service thing. And also just because I really like it. So much of the work that I do, there's two different types of this type of work. One is 911 work, where you kind of work with the fire department. You know, getting people who are in car crashes and having heart attacks. And the one that I'm doing is more of, I'm taking people out of emergency rooms and I'm taking them to other hospitals. So I'm kind of trying to keep the flow of patients going. So I get to meet a lot of really interesting people with interesting stories. So that's part of the reason I like to do it.
So it's this ambulance that we see in every American movies. I mean, for an international, this will be, one.
Yeah, the guy driving that.
That's this one. Yes. It could be you. Yeah. So that they can fix your way.
And have you ever had, like we always see in the movies, a police chase in the ambulance? Or
no, not yet.
Okay.
But I'm waiting for that opportunity.
Okay.
It's just like there's something fun about putting on the lights and sirens. It doesn't happen that often for me, but every once in a while, but never with the police around. So
okay, well, we can dream.
We can dream, and obviously I will let everyone here at the podcast know if that ever does happen.
Okay.
Could be maybe.
Please take some audio while it's happening so that we can work that into the
into my phone.
Yeah, that'd be great. But so since you told us a little bit about what you do, will you kind of fill us in on your bio a little bit? Tell us about your job at USC. Tell us that we know we've mentioned that you live downtown. We'll kind of get into that, but just give us a quick little intro to Scott.
Yeah. So real quick intro. I was an Army brat growing up. Grew up in a lot of different places, and then I went to high school and college in Chicago, and I came out here to LA in the mid 90s and always missed the city. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. The work I do now is I work at USC as a project manager. And we also talked about the kind of side work that I do as an EMT. And I'm also the dad of two college-age young women. So one of them is about to start medical school in about a month, and the other is a junior at USC. So I work at USC, so does my wife. We're kind of tied up in the university that way. And but we chose to move into downtown, or I should say chose to move back into downtown about 2 years ago, and we love it.
Because so you guys lived downtown before you had kids, right?
Yeah. So one of the interesting things was I came to go to graduate school and I really missed the city. And when you're kind of going around LA, I don't know why this was something I struggled so much with, but seeing, going down these big freeways with these little tiny homes and, small apartment buildings just really did not kind of, enthuse me. I didn't really want to live there. And so I would actually, at the time I didn't have a car, I had a motorcycle. So I would drive my motorcycle through downtown kind of on the weekends, whatever, just because I missed the big feeling of the buildings all around me. And so I met, I had a girlfriend at the time who became my wife, and at a certain point, we moved in together, and she lived in a tiny little studio apartment on the edge of Beverly Hills, and we were paying, I think, at that time, something like $750 a month for a little 350 square foot studio. And I kept going, man, wouldn't it be great to be in downtown? And coming from Chicago, loft living was what you wanted. You wanted to have the buildings with the hardwood floors and the beautiful brick. And I was always so surprised of the friends that I had who were just perfectly happy to live in these tiny little dinky apartments. And so I remember kind of going into downtown and seeing some of these various buildings and going, man, this is great. We should look here. And we ended up finding a place that was in the Artist District. And this was 1998. So this was really kind of before downtown was really having its renaissance, or its most recent renaissance. And we ended up in a 1,300 square foot loft apartment with 12-foot ceilings and giant wood beams and brick, everywhere. And that we were paying $900 a month.
Okay.
And we're like, this is amazing. Like we have totally scored. And we're like telling our friends, you got to come and visit us. And everyone's like, oh, I'm not going to downtown. We'll get mugged and we'll die. And you're like, no, it's actually really safe. It's really great. You should come and see. And I think it took 9 months before we had our first guest. Actually, was willing, who was willing to actually come to us, and and was like not frightened of. It was interesting that way. But we actually lived in downtown for about 3 years. We got married, and relatively soon after that, my wife got pregnant. And we ended up building a nursery in that, in our loft. And so the first 9 months of my oldest daughter were here in downtown. And, it was interesting because we were making it work. And we loved the kind of the community that we had built. Because at the time, the Artist District, now being one of the hippest neighborhoods in the country, at the time was really just a relatively small community, maybe 200 people. Most, I mean, I could be wrong. I mean, there could have been lots of other little pockets of people that I'm unaware of, but it was a lot of photographers and artists and painters, and it was a great kind of artistic community. It was away from a lot of the the historic core, which at that time wasn't great. And so there was this feeling of like we were this tiny little pocket community, and we kind of made friends with all our neighbors. But there was a certain point where my wife at that time was saying, I'm taking my daughter's name is Alexa, and she's like, I'm taking Alexa on these walks. And she'd gotten to know like all the homeless people along the way, and we had like relationships, and so but she's like, it would be kind of nice to have some grass. And so there was a certain point. By the time Alexa was turning about 1, we actually moved up to Highland Park, and we lived up in kind of Highland Park and South Pasadena, which are kind of close to downtown, but more of just kind of traditional suburban communities. And we were there for about 20 years, up until my youngest daughter, Taya, she just finished college, and then we had the opportunity to move back to downtown. We knew we were going to be empty nesters, and we were like, you know what? We could stay here and just kind of stay in the same kind of particular place and same community without the kids, or we could actually go back to urban living, which is what has always been what we like. And so we did. So we came, and we've been here now for 2 years, and it's great.
And tell us about where in downtown you guys ended up this time.
So we are actually at 3rd and Spring. So we are part of the Old Bank District, which is, I guess, it's not really part of the historic core. It's kind of on the edge of the historic core. There's an interesting kind of thing. So we are actually relatively close to the Civic Center of LA. So we're about 2 blocks south of City Hall. We're 1 block south of the LA Police Headquarters. And we're in this kind of community. So we're right across the street from the Bradbury Building, which is a very famous building. And also just around the corner from the Grand Central Market, which is another one of those kind of very famous locations. If you know downtown, you most likely are kind of would have gone there. When I first came, the Grand Central Market was a place where you could get really cheap produce and really cheap vegetables. And now it's just all of these amazing stands, but it is definitely a different price point than it used to be. So it's an interesting kind of mix of where you've got some kind of burned out buildings, some amazing historic buildings and some amazing new places that are all kind of within a few blocks of each other. So,
and you bought a condo at this time, right?
bought a condo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And did you think about renting, or did you always know that you wanted to buy a place down here?
You know, it was interesting. You know, in the community that we had been, you know, we were living in a relatively large house. We were renting, and it was about a 2,400 square foot house. It had a full garage. We had it filled with stuff. You know, but that house, if we were to buy it, and we were trying to buy it from our landlords, but they, you know, wouldn't budge. That was going to be like a 1.8 million dollar purchase. I mean, which was kind of an astronomical number for a house that essentially was, you know, 3 bedrooms, 4 bedrooms. And so when we were we knew we wanted to, you know, get out of the rental market, buy again. And really quickly, it became clear that of a lot of the communities surrounding us, it was just going to be too expensive. But downtown was one of the very few places that was still had kind of, you know, where you could actually buy something that was like nice, but, you know, not at such astronomically high prices. And one of my really good friends was representing a particular property, and he's like, "Oh, you got to come and see this." And I'm like, "Yeah, you know, it's not going to work. I'm sure it's not going to work." And we got there and we're like, "Oh, we really like this place, and we like the floors, and same kind of thing, you know, hardwood floors and brick and giant windows." And it was a renovated building. The building had been made in 1899, and it had been a former office building that had been renovated into condos in 2004. And we're just like, this would be great. And I kept thinking, yeah, I'm sure the deal's not going to work. And somehow we got the deal to work, and we were able to actually, you know, invest in downtown and actually not just be renters, but actually, you know, actually financially be able to stay here. So, yeah.
What did your daughters think about the move?
Interestingly enough, we thought our daughters would love the community that we had been in. And, you know, because it was very, like, the community that we had been part of was very much this feeling of kind of living in like Mayberry, you know, of this like lovely idyllic kind of, you know, suburban community. And what I thought was really funny is when we said, "Hey, we're looking to leave," you know, sorry girls, we're looking to leave, you know, obviously, you know, when you come home from college, it's going to be a much tinier place, and you're probably going to have to share a room, those kind of things. And we thought that would be, you know, something that they would really struggle with. And they were actually quite excited. They were excited about the idea of living in downtown. Surprisingly enough, they didn't really particularly like the community that we were part of, which frankly was very surprising. And so what's interesting now is in the last couple of years, they very much love coming to, you know, and spending more time in downtown and getting to know the community just as much as we do. And, you know, I'm a little bit older, obviously, than my kids. And so for my kids, there's a different, you know, selection of things in the community that they're going to be really interested in, as opposed to what I'm really interested in, you know.
But to me, in my understanding, when you are in your early 20s, if you know about downtown, and Spring Street is the place where you can go out and party and that your parents are just living on Spring Street. It's it's an amazing advantage, no? I don't know. Yes, you have to be 21, I suppose, to an nightclub here.
Yeah.
And then, yes, and if you are crazy drunk, you can just go back.
Stumble back to your parents' house.
Yeah, it can be quite convenient.
Yeah. You know, it's really interesting. I just had assumed that, you know, that my kids were going to be like, "Oh, I want to have this safe location in the suburbs and whatever." And I was willing to stay in that community to kind of provide that for them. But what was so nice for us was because I think, you know, my wife Kristine and we had gotten to the point where like, "Hey, this has been fantastic, but we're, you know, and we still have many friends in those communities, and, you know, and we visit often, and we see the people that we love. But for us, we were ready to kind of make a transition. And so, as I was saying, it was so nice that the girls were willing to make that transition as well. And I think, if there is a challenge in downtown, kind of just globally, it's hard to have like a young family in downtown. You don't see a lot of young families. But my kids were at an age, being, young, college age or post-college age women, where they could actually enjoy this community. And they were also old enough to understand some of the, if you don't want to say dangers per se, but the challenge of living in a mixed community like we do. Yeah.
Okay.
So how is it different living downtown now than it was the last time? I mean, you're in a different place, but like, what have you noticed that's really changed?
I think one of the biggest things, and we can, there's some obvious elements of how much investment happened over the course of 20 years and how much the residential community just exploded from that time in 1998 when we first arrived. And nobody wanted to visit us because everyone thought they were going to be, attacked and their car was going to be stripped of auto parts, in a matter of a couple of minutes.
It's still the case. Huh? You have a lot of people who are... No, I mean, so, yeah, people still have this impression. Yeah. Yes.
Right. And so, there's that kind of obvious kind of element of, even if you did live in downtown, there wasn't necessarily a grocery store here, at the time in 1998, through kind of 2002. I think it was 2004, 2005 when the Ralphs came in on 9th Street. And that was like such a huge thing. It was like, oh my gosh, we actually have. We have a grocery store, we have a dry cleaner that we can go to.
I could not imagine that Ralph would be like a great news.
Well, if it's Ralph's or like, a corner store that doesn't have everything you need, like that's kind of a huge deal. Yeah.
I just live next to these Ralph stores.
Yeah.
I mean, and when I was listening to your previous episode, you were kind of talking about like, oh, it's so nice to live in a community where I don't need a car. Well, even though you might be living in a condo or whatever, you definitely still needed a car because all the resources of a kind of let's say, of a person of means was the idea, like you were going to go, like we were going to the Trader Joe's in Silver Lake. We were going to, the various kind of, areas to buy clothes, to buy food, to buy, home goods, all that kind of stuff was not local. Or it was difficult to get to in the local.
So you had like a city lifestyle, but you needed to have a car to be in this city lifestyle. Right. That was the
right.
So it's like okay,
you couldn't actually like do what you can do today, which is essentially, if you choose to, you could basically do everything in downtown, and very rarely you might need something specific from a different part of town. And the metro had started, but by no means was it as active and as wide-ranging as it is now. And just the community of people was just different. I think part of it, too, is when we think about the skyline of downtown Los Angeles, it's maybe 3 times as, complex or bigger in the terms of how many new buildings came in over the years. Prior to that, so much of downtown was just surface area parking lots.
Oh, yeah.
And so when you would talk about downtown as a place, it was this very large area, but a very small community. And now what I think is very different about downtown in the time since we moved back is downtown's not one community. Downtown's like 6.
For sure.
Different community. Like you have the people, you have the Staples Center, and you have stuff that's going on in Bunker Hill, and then you have the, obviously the historic core, and then the artist district kind of just took over and became its own entire other community. So it's so much more vibrant. There's so much more activity. There's so many more people. What I do find really interesting about that, though, is in the same way that there, a lot of communities might have an influx of young, educated people with means who come into a community. A lot of times they're forcing out the old community. That doesn't really seem to be the case in downtown. The community that was here is still here. So what we do have is you have a lot of people, you have people who kind of added to the mix. They didn't replace what was already here.
You mean that there was no gentrification? Is what you want to do?
Well, the gentrification didn't push out the existing community, which is actually what we found when we were looking at some statistics last week about the the population downtown. It wasn't as skewed toward single young professionals as we had thought it might be. There were more families, a greater economic diversity, and yeah.
Oh, okay.
Oh yeah. In fact, it was there's a higher. What was the number? The average household size is larger in downtown than in Los Angeles as a whole.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, that was surprising.
Yeah.
But I think that in our district now we can talk about pure gentrification, no?
Oh, there's definitely gentrification happening. I think it's not as, it isn't pushing out communities in quite the same way. I hope. I think there's still kind of a nice mix of availability of housing and of people here.
So what was interesting, and this was kind of another part of my story, is I lived in downtown from 1998 till about 2002, but then also in that kind of run up of activity especially around the historic core, I was very much involved kind of with a number of companies that were doing developments for kind of residential developments during that time. And so what you had is a lot of the new developments, the new apartments that were coming in were a lot of times older buildings that really didn't have anyone in them above like the retail floor. So you had activity on that first floor, and then you had acres and acres of basically floors in these buildings that were just basically home to pigeons. And so what you had is investment money coming in and turning those buildings into new condos and apartments for people. The older buildings, the buildings that had been used as residential, and a lot of times let's kind of say like oftentimes kind of flop houses, a number of those got actually turned into affordable housing. So they were the same community largely could stay in buildings like the Alexandria, but they were being brought up to a standard that just they hadn't been before. So it wasn't that you were losing the community; it was just you were developing a kind of a better, better infrastructure to kind of support that community. And I don't want to, that's a very broad statement. I know that has not happened all over the place, and I know that some of it's more complicated than that. But that is kind of an interesting thing when we talk about Spring Street. Spring Street is kind of an interesting kind of example of a lot of new locations that were kind of new housing that was brought in, and then also old housing that was renovated, oftentimes for affordable housing or inclusionary zoning. So yeah.
Spring Street is now like full of people, full of apartments, and it's very busy. And where compared to Broadway, which is the parallel street, where Broadway is completely empty.
I know, it's really sad.
Yeah.
Yes, because they were assigned as commercial, so all these buildings must be offices, but nobody wants to have an office on Broadway. Yeah. And but I guess that's going to change very soon with the zoning code to authorize more apartments. That would be we should be able to transform all these apartments of all these buildings, these office buildings into apartments, and that would have a lot of people and life and more restaurant and more things. I'm wondering when you said that. So you said that you were like 200 people in our district, and in 98 to 2000.
I'm sure that number's wrong. I'm sure there was many thousands, but in the community that we knew, yeah.
But there was like restaurant bars. There was activities for people.
There were.
How did it look like?
Once again, it was like there was little pockets, and if you knew where to go, you could find. So there was like Al's Bar in in the artist district, and that was kind of that was one of the staple locations. And and the same proprietor also had a little convenience mart, right about there. Then on 3rd Street, where SciArc is now, there was just like this one building that had like a lot of like really kind of high end. There was like R23, which was a high end Japanese restaurant. There was a place called Metropole, which was like a little fancy coffee shop, and then there were a number of architectural firms. And you're like, oh wow, this is great. And I think it was like we always kind of running into that same issue of looking at stuff, and you're going, man, this block is amazing. Wouldn't it be great if all the blocks were like this? And unfortunately, they weren't. You would have like one block that would be really nice, and it would be surrounded by, as I said, parking lots and a lot of empty buildings.
So, which bar or restaurant was existing that still exists now? That like Hauser and Wills, for example, didn't exist. I suppose the gallery, the art gallery with the restaurant Manuela.
Yeah. Was there anything when you were living in the arts district that's still there in terms of the businesses and the restaurants and stuff?
Oh,
The Death and Co.
yeah. You know what?
Yeah.
I'm sure. Yeah, it feels like almost everything has kind of changed. It has turned over, has changed. You know, I'm sorry, I'll probably lose my downtown cred. You know,
What about this little bar, the Tony's Saloon? You know Tony's Saloon on 7th Street
No.
in our district? Oh, it's cool.
Okay.
It's a cool
No.
bar.
We'll go do an episode.
That's really cool.
It looks like very awesome. Maybe.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So
I mean, I think what was exciting though about, especially kind of in that time period of like 2002 to maybe about 2007, there was this 5-year period where there's so much happening in downtown, and people were going into neighborhoods that were like, it wasn't just the obvious, activities on Spring Street or, even on Broadway or Hill, areas where you could sit there and go, oh yeah, okay, we're not too far from the financial district. And yeah, that makes sense, whatever. You had people who were doing like the Toy Factory lofts, on the east side of Alameda, where it was kind of like, I mean, that was where like the super crazy people were. Like that was like where you didn't want to go there past 6 o'clock at night because you were like, oh, okay, this is like,
it's chaotic.
yeah, this is really, really chaotic. But people were, people started putting condos there for the Toy Factory loft, and then they ended up setting up their own high end kind of places, once again, the little convenience mart that went in. There were a couple restaurants, Church and State. I don't know if the Church and State's still around at that time. And they were like, oh my gosh, like people were taking these, areas that had largely been kind of left, vacant, and turning something new and making something exciting with it. And I do feel like that hasn't really stopped. There's always this opportunity. I think what sometimes does get frustrating with downtown is there is this feeling of like things kind of come in waves, right? Where things kind of like, you're like, oh wow, this is so much better than it was. And then like the pandemic happens and you lose a lot of the retail, and then it kind of feels like we're having, we kind of sank back a little bit and we're having to kind of push forward again and kind of make things nice again.
What are you, in terms of like looking forward in the neighborhood, or what are you excited about, that you see changing, or that you hope, your hopes for the neighborhood, I guess?
I think it's a lot of what you have talked about previously on the podcast is really similar. Is you see the investment that people make, and there is a tougher element of downtown that is not necessarily always kind to that. So like on Broadway and 4th, there's like a new cheese shop that was brought in, and it's great. It's such a lovely location. They've got amazing, great food and stuff like that. They were there probably 3 weeks before all their windows were like, tagged or scored, and you're just kind of going like, okay, why can't we have nice things? Come on, why can't we just keep things nice? Like, do we always need 24/7 security to be able, to essentially kind of protect everything that people are doing? And I know I was talking to one of my neighbors, and they were like saying like, oh yeah, they try as much as possible to support the local businesses, because it's not necessarily the residential community coming and going, it's the businesses that struggle to stay. And so what would be great is to be able to see the investment, to see, as you said, like Broadway, which is, largely kind of old department stores that have all gone out, and there's not really much to replace them. And it would be really great to be able to see new things that kind of are able to stick around. And that's not all of Broadway. I'm just talking about kind of in that area of like, 5th Street to 7th Street is really kind of an empty kind of area. But then you get to 8th Street and you have the Tower Theater that became the Apple Store. And there's a lot of really great places in that, part. And you just want to be able to kind of see those continue to extend. And because when you have those nicer kind of, when you have those different retail spots and you have those different restaurants and bars, places for people to go, you have a lot more foot traffic.
Yeah.
And there's that feeling of like, hey, we're alive in this community. So I love that part of it. I would say currently one of my favorite things about downtown, and you mentioned it also too, is just how easy it is to get around without a car. And, my family, we have one car, kind of spread between 4 people, but we don't actually have to use it very much. During the week, I can, if I'm going to my job, I can take the metro. A lot of times, if I'm kind of gonna go around the city, I just take a metro bike, or I can take a scooter. And it's kind of living at a little bit lower of an environmental impact, which is one of those things that is something that's also kind of near and dear my heart. You don't necessarily think of living in downtown LA as an environmental choice, but there's the New York Times opinion columnist Ezra Klein was talking about this, the difference between green environmentalism versus gray environmentalism. And green environmentalism is kind of like the people who want to live out in the countryside, among nature. Gray environmentalism is kind of like, okay, I'm going to live in a city, but I'm going to use fewer resources because I'm in a tinier footprint. I don't have to drive so much. I can kind of make choices that reduce my overall environmental impact. And I feel like that's something you can do in downtown that you can't do in other parts of LA.
I noticed that in Europe also, we have always a misconception of like, oh, if I live in the countryside, I'm helping the environment. It's not true, of course, because you need a car. You need to go everywhere with your car. The construction of the road is like more expensive. It's less efficient. You are consuming way more resource. You have to go to the supermarket. But if you are in a dense area like a city, even if it looks grey, like you said, I mean, it doesn't have to be grey because you could have real parks. It's not what we have, but you could have more like a green area. But if you are, your impact on the environment is way bigger by being in the city than being in the countryside.
Well, the other thing it does too is because you are able to walk everywhere and get around on a more kind of human scale, it puts you in closer contact with the community. I mean, you're walking past businesses that you decide to stop in. I often just run into people I know, or, see people hanging out at a coffee shop and say hello. And that's not the kind of thing that ever happened when I lived in Los Feliz, which was the last neighborhood I lived in, which is still a pretty walkable neighborhood, in the scale of U.S. cities. But it's so much more here, and you really feel like you're invested in the neighborhood, and you have those connections, and you can kind of spontaneously stop places and see people and talk to them in a way that I found really fulfilling.
Well, and I think, this was something I think you even commented on in your very first episode, which is this.
You are really a fan.
I listen to everyone, all of them except one. And it's only just because.
It's a 2-minute episode.
So I think one of the things that I really have grown to appreciate is, there are perhaps a handful of people who are just kind of in the downtown community that were raised here, but not many. The vast majority of people that you're going to meet in this community have chosen to live here and have chosen to build a community here. And there's a very big difference, when you're living in a place where people choose to stay, and for whatever their particular reason or their particular choice, and that kind of feeling of like this, like, hey, we're all in this together, and this is where we choose to be. And so, hey, do you need a hand? Can I, hey, how's it going? How are you doing? What's up? And it's same kind of thing. I've lived in a lot of communities, since I was a kid, and some of the places that you would think would be really open and great to live in oftentimes can be very, exclusive as opposed to inclusive. And I feel that living in downtown oftentimes is one of the most inclusive places that I've lived in. Obviously, I think we're all kind of having to kind of manage. Yeah, we have to be, there's an element of downtown where it's a little more challenging that you have to be a little bit more aware of, and you have to be careful with. But I think what I've really grown to appreciate is how often people, that I run into are proud to be a part of this community and want to stay a part of this community.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the things that kind of got us to, why we became friends and why we decided to do the podcast was it seems like often when people who live downtown get together, one of the things that comes up is how much we love living downtown.
Yeah.
It just comes up all the time. And so we wanted to talk about it.
Yeah. I think going back to your original kind of question, I think some of the things I'm excited about are like, the Olympics that are going to be coming to Los Angeles, there's a lot of kind of renovation that's happening to downtown Los Angeles because of that. I don't want to get my hopes up too high. It's not like we can necessarily, completely change the city in the next, 3-4 years. But I do kind of feel like, this is an opportunity. It's there's another kind of surge of investment to really kind of, make this community kind of what it could be, or a little closer to what it could be.
Yeah.
And I really do kind of appreciate that. What I do find funny though is the number of my friends who are coming in from like those, communities like Highland Park and South Pasadena, and when they come for dinner now, and everybody wants to come for dinner now, it's just completely different than before, and how much people are like, oh my God, I wish I made this decision. And you're like, yeah, but you didn't, and we're here, and you're not. But you can come,
And they are still complaining about the parking.
We are actually really lucky is that we are able to offer parking to people when they come to visit, depending on the time. So it actually does make things a lot easier for when people come to visit, when you can offer them some parking. But, and strangely enough, I've had people take me up on this where I'm going, hey, you're next to a metro stop. And we're next to a metro stop, and you could just take the metro straight down. Yeah. It's not a big deal. And, and the number of people, once again, where it's this thing like, oh, I don't know about, taking public transportation. It's the same kind of, well, I don't know about being in a downtown community. Isn't that like Skid Row? And you're like, no, it's not, so.
Well, I think it's come time for the downtown pop quiz.
Okay.
So we did the DTLA trivia on Friday, and we had 20 questions. We're not going to give you 20 questions.
Thank goodness.
But we're going to give you 3 questions, one of which is easy, one medium, and one that we found challenging. I'm going to mix them up a little bit, and we'll see how you do compared to how we did. You'll probably kick our butts.
All right. Girding my loins.
Okay.
Speak.
Question number 1. Which building will be the new DTLA home of UCLA? Is it? Do you know offhand? Because I could give you multiple choice.
I think I do. It's on Spring Street between it's between 4th and 5th. Is it the Trust building?
It is. It's the Trust building.
That was the easy one, wasn't it?
That was the medium one.
That was the medium one.
Okay. Next question. Where is Our Lady of DTLA?
Our Lady of DTLA. Is this a mural?
It is.
Is it on 2nd Street, across the street from? No. Oh, no.
Do you want multiple choice?
Yeah, give me a multiple
Okay.
choice.
Is it 5th and Hill, 7th and Broadway, 6th and Spring, or 8th and Main?
Oh gosh, this is awful. This is awful.
I think we failed at this one, no? And
Yeah, we failed at this one.
Yeah.
But now you'll
After
never.
I check what it is. Yeah, but
I mean,
you know
it's a mural.
You know exactly what it is, but
I'm not sure I
Yeah.
recognize, like, because there's a number of like amazing murals. But can you describe what the mural looks like?
It would help you too much.
Yeah. No,
I mean,
not. It looks like sort of a take on a saint portrait. So it's a woman, and there's sort of a colored glow around her head,
Oh.
and it wraps around the corner of a building.
Huh.
And the background is yellow.
Yeah. The color around her is yellow, and it's on a gray building.
And what were the multiple choices again?
5th and Hill, 7th and Broadway, 6th and Spring, 8th and Main.
I think it's 7th.
It's not. It's 6th and Spring. So it's the building. It's got it's like a bodega
Yeah.
on the ground floor, and it's kind of apartments on above, and it's mostly on Spring, and it wraps around to 6th.
It's in front of the Starbucks.
Yeah, it's across from the Starbucks.
Yes.
Yeah.
On Spring Street, yeah.
You'll never not see it now when you pass that corner.
That's all right. Okay, but there's a lovely tiny little mural that's in an alleyway on 2nd Street between Spring and Main.
Mm-hmm.
And if you know where Redfin is, it's which is a kind of a restaurant on the corner here near St. Bibiana's. It's a beautiful little mural in the alleyway, but it's actually of kind of, Our Lady of Los Angeles.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've seen that one. Yeah, like the original Our Lady of the Queen of the Angels of
Right.
the
Right. But
full name
not the
thing.
one that you were talking
Not that one. Yeah.
Sorry.
Okay.
Was that the easy one?
That was the hard.
That was the hard.
That was the hard one. Okay.
So that was the easy
So
one.
now
Done.
the easy one.
Okay.
Where in DTLA can you see balloon animals and flowers that never wilt? I can give you multiple choice, but once you hear the multiple choice.
Oh, are we talking about the Broad Museum?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm like thinking outside.
Well, once you hear the multiple choice.
Balloon album.
Yeah.
Well, not really balloon album.
Yeah.
Well,
like
I guess it is a balloon animal, even if it's made out of something.
It's a representation of a balloon animal. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Crazy.
those were a sample of the questions.
Okay. Well, okay. Did I get 2 out of 3?
Yeah, you got 2 out of 3.
2 out of 3. Okay. So
Yeah.
which
So
kind of
you
puts
did
me.
Okay. Puts you right up there. Right here at the top. Yeah.
I'd be like, what? Santa Monica? No.
But they were all
That is
multiple
bull-
choice, except for there was one about Disney Hall that was fill in the blank. But otherwise, they were multiple choice.
Oh, okay.
Well,
Well, that's good.
Yeah, it was a good time.
Well, that's cool.
So we're going to do a quick wrap up here and talk about some things that are upcoming this week and some new stuff. I have a new business that I found this morning. We were talking about Broadway and how there's that kind of stretch of Broadway where there's not a lot. There's a new coffee shop on Broadway between 7th and 8th. It's called Base Caffe.
Oh, excellent. We have
So,
to go check
yeah.
it out. Okay.
Yeah. So I found that. What else? What's happening this week?
You tell me.
The Continental Club is hosting a presidential debate watching party on Thursday. So if you, it's a nightclub, but they've got a happy hour special, I guess, on Thursday to come watch the debate.
A presidential debate. How exciting is that?
Well, I think it seems like a natural spot. You go, you have a couple of drinks. It's going to be entertaining in some way.
In some way, it's going to be entertaining,
So,
and
yeah.
you might need to drink a lot.
You might need to drink. So head over to the Continental Club if you want to be have some drinks and watch what could be a very interesting debate with some of your community members.
What day was that?
Thursday.
Thursday. Do
Yeah.
you want to give the date?
Thursday. Oh, sorry, that's a good point. Thursday, June 27th.
Thursday, June.
June 27th. This coming Thursday. And then KCRW has their Summer Nights event. They have a series of concerts, but there's a Summer Nights event this coming Friday, the 28th, at the California African American Museum. So they're going to have DJ, food trucks, beer garden, and you will have after hours museum access along with that event. So head down there and get some music and see the museum.
Cool.
Do you know of anything coming up this week, Scott, that you want to?
I mean, can I do my own shameless self-promotion? Yeah. So, it's not specifically about downtown, but if you are interested, I do a newsletter that always goes out on Thursdays. It's called Early Thursday. It's a weekly list of the cool things in life for grown-ups. Because if I say adults, then people get the wrong impression. So this is really just kind of for grown-ups. Sometimes I talk about what's happening in downtown and kind of the things that I found. A lot of times it's just about other kind of cool and interesting things that are going on. So you can actually, if you're interested, Thoroughly Thursday, that's thoroughlythursday.substack.com.
And we will link to that in the show notes and on our social media.
Hey, things we forget is that
Okay.
what's happening this week is that we run.
Yeah.
We run this week. So Scott and I, we belong to the same running club that started the block.
Actually, I would say this is the best value in downtown is to be able to go to the Downtown Los Angeles Running Club, which is a free running club that you can go, at the block, which is what is that, 7th and Hope?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, one of the big kind of things, and I'm so sorry, I should have mentioned this before, is the LA Music Center on Friday nights during the summer does free dance, kind of like, where you can actually go. They have various dance styles, and from 7 o'clock to 10 o'clock on Friday nights, you can go and there's someone who can kind of teach you how to do salsa dancing. This last Friday, which I went to, I should have mentioned that before, was Bollywood dancing. And so you had...
Oh, how was that? I registered and then I didn't have time to go because I wanted to see what it is. So how can you? I mean, of course, it's not very OG. How does it look like to do Bollywood dance?
My Bollywood dancing is terrible, but what they have is that they have a stage and they had a DJ who was actually, basically spinning Bollywood, dance songs, and then they actually had a dance troupe come out and basically show the crowd how to do various, dance moves, and then kind of take you through a routine. So it was a really fun kind of thing to do, and it's something that we've decided to do kind of throughout the summer. So I don't know if you guys are busy on Friday nights, but we're going to actually be hosting. We're bringing friends in from outside of downtown, coming to our place, and we're going to and we walk up. And it's one of those things. Once again, it's totally free. It's a great kind of thing to do, and there's hundreds of people, all levels of danceability. I'm on one of the lower levels of danceability, and then you get people who are just kind of fantastic and amazing. And what I love about it is it's a different dance style each week. So I think this upcoming week is going to be salsa, and then they're going to have cumbia dancing, and then toward the end of it, they're going to have disco, and they're going to have country line dancing. So something that's kind of part of the community that people can participate.
Yeah, we'll definitely do that.
Yes,
That sounds like fun.
it's on my radar. I wanted to do.
But there's too many awesome things.
Yes, there is. Yeah.
And we'll definitely put that in the show notes and stuff too, so people can link directly to that information. Scott, thank you so much for being here.
This has been such a pleasure. Thank you so much, and I wish you all the best for this podcast. And
thank you.
Yeah,
it's
just been so much fun.
It's we'll have you back at some point when we take over the world and episode 200, 300.
When I have to plead, like, hey guys, remember me? I was your first guest. Can I come back?
How many followers can you bring?
When we do one of our live shows on our tour, you can come out on stage to cheers and
Go.
No, this was fantastic, and we really appreciate you coming.
I really enjoyed being here. Thank you so much.
We need more activists like you. People who defend the neighborhood. Come back.
Making me sound like Batman, so that's even better. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, you drive an ambulance. You save life. There is a little bit of that.
Okay, sounds great. I'll take it. I'll take that compliment. Thank you.
All right. Thanks so much, everyone. Make sure to follow us on Instagram, and we'll talk to you in about a week.
Yes. Thank you very much.
All right.
Have a good one.